Welcome back to another episode of Off the Bench, Northern Arizona Prep Sports, presented by Rice Accounting and Jackson Hewitt Tax Services and Cottonwood Parks and Recreation. I'm your host, Philip Catalfamo. We have got a great show in store for you this week. Later in the program, we'll be joined by Chino Valley High School track and field coach Marc Metz. He joins the show to speak about state competition, how it feels to coach his son at state, and talks about goals for next season. We'll then be joined by Prescott High School softball coach Randall Bryan. He'll break down the playoffs, speak about his solid sophomore pitchers, and how club ball might help prepare players for the high school season. And when we return from break, we'll be joined by Northland Prep Academy baseball coach Dylan Brown. He joins the show to speak about his coaching origins, wraps up the season, and previews the offseason. All of that and a whole lot more coming up right here on Off the Bench. Stay with us. We will be right back.
Two things we can count on every year:
a new set of tax rules and great weather here in Northern Arizona.
Jackson Hewitt Tax Service, locally owned and operated by Lewis Rice since 1997, is here for you all year long.
Your neighborhood Jackson Hewitt Tax Office will help you in all of your taxing situations.
Electronic filing is always free with your tax preparation at Jackson Hewitt Tax Service.
Get more in return. Call 1-800-234-1040 for an office near you.
Welcome back to Off the Bench, Northern Arizona Prep Sports, presented by Rice Accounting and Jackson Hewitt Tax Services and Cottonwood Parks and Recreation. I'm joined now by Northland Prep Academy baseball coach Dylan Brown. Coach Brown, welcome on to the show.
Hey, thanks for having me.
Well, we're very happy to have you, Coach. The Spartans wrapped up the 2022 season with a 5-14 overall record, 3-7 in the region. Coach, before we break down the season, I'd just love to talk a little bit about your coaching origins, as you're a little new to the program. How did you get started coaching baseball? Where did you participate at NPA?
No, so I'm originally from Illinois. I just moved here. This is my first year at NPA. But I mean, I played baseball all of my life growing up. I played like all sports in high school. I played football, basketball, baseball. So I kind of, I just like being around sports. So saw there was an opening, I took it.
So it was just as simple as that. I mean, you just kind of were looking for opportunities to coach, and a team in Coconino County and in Arizona called and you took the offer?
Yep.
Who would you say are some of your coaching influences?
Probably one of my middle school baseball coaches. He was brand new when I entered middle school, and he worked his way up, became the high school coach. So I pretty much had him growing up. Also one of my close friends, his dad was like our baseball coach in the summer. He pretty much used baseball as coaching, like to teach like life, like lessons. So that I feel like that really carried over to a lot of things I do today.
You a big Tony La Russa fan, Coach?
Yeah. I mean, I grew up in Illinois, so my dad was a Cardinals fan. My mom was a White Sox fan. So I had Tony La Russa on both teams.
Yeah, very nice. And how ironic now that, like you said, now he's coaching the White Sox, former longtime St. Louis Cardinals manager. Coach, like I said, you guys wrapped up the 2022 season. How did you feel the year went in your first season coaching the program?
I mean, obviously it didn't end the way we wanted it to, but basically like that team is brand new to baseball. I think we only have maybe like 2 or 3 guys that actually have baseball experience. So, I mean, where we started, where we ended, I'm super proud of that team and where we ended.
Well, you talk a little bit about some of those players who were brand new, Coach. I mean, can we talk a little bit about how you sort of approach a baseball player who is new to the sport, or some of the players like you had mentioned who, maybe taken a few years off of baseball? How do you approach somebody who is new to the game when they come into your program? I mean, where do you start?
I mean, you basically just start at the bottom. I mean, we basically, like our first few weeks of practice, we're just doing nothing but hitting off tees. I mean, we try to slow the game down as much as we could for them. just teach them the basics, and then we worked our way up.
What about pitching, coach? I mean, are these guys come? I mean, we'll talk about your rotation in a little bit, but did you have a couple new pitchers as well? I mean, where do you start with a brand new pitcher?
Yeah, I mean, we had one stud on our team that was pitching. That was Jordan Donahue from the team last year. But pretty much after that, we had to teach everyone how to pitch. Yeah. So a lot of them, it was kind of just teaching them how to throw the ball at first. And then again, like we just worked our way up. Kids that could put the speed on the ball, we turned into pitchers basically.
What about up at the plate, coach? I mean, what do you do sort of like training wise or even some drills for some hitters? I mean, how do you get these guys starting to see the ball up at the plate and starting to make contact bat to ball? Because as we all know, I mean, hitting a baseball is quite hard, especially when it's going more than 2 miles an hour.
Yeah. So again, I mean, like we literally just hit off tees like for weeks when the season started.
Yeah.
And I mean, we don't have any pitching machines or anything. So I would try to like gradually speed it up, pitching it to them. I would start really slow. Every other week, I may try to add a little bit more speed. And I feel like that worked for a lot of kids, like that gradual speed up. And I mean, again, it's just working from the bottom up.
Well, again, coach, talking more about that tee, like you said, sort of hitting off the tee to start off the season throughout the year. I mean, what does sort of utilizing tee work help with your batters? How did that improve some of the guys who were first starting off?
Yeah. So, I mean, tee work, I think, really looked down on. But, I mean, you can put the tee in the center of the plate. You can work outside, inside pitches. So, I think just having, like, the ball in different spots and working on, hitting that into left field, like poking it into right field, stuff like that really worked with the kids.
Speaking more so about the players you had, no seniors on the roster this year, which is great because you'll be able to carry basically the exact same team into next season with, of course, a couple additions. But more specifically, coach, your junior class, Jerry Wilson and Dylan Moneypenny leading the charge in batting average, both in that class, that junior class, batting over 480 on the season. We talk about a couple of these guys coming in, not having too much knowledge about the sport, where you do have, like you'd said, a few guys who are very familiar with baseball. But what did you like from this junior class this year? They're going to be your first class of seniors next year. But how did you like their efforts this season?
I mean, I love the toughness that both of those kids bring. I mean, Jerry Wilson, that kid pretty much would pitch, then go into catcher right afterwards. I mean, he pretty much gave his whole arm to this team this year. I mean, he had to sit out our last few games because of his arm, but he wanted to be in there every single game after that. I mean, Moneypenny's the same way, tough kid, always wants to compete, and I mean, that's what you want in a team.
Yeah. You have a sophomore class as well, some standouts there, Jordan Donahue, Leaf Balin, both leading the charge in terms of batting average and just in general in terms of statistical leaders for that sophomore class. What do you think this group can accomplish, Coach? They're going to be coming into their junior year next season. They'll have one more year with you before they graduate, but what have you liked from your sophomore class?
I mean, the sophomore class, I think I'm really excited for. I mean, we got pretty much the Swiss Army knife in Jordan Donahue. I mean, he basically can do it all. He pitches, bats, fields. Kid's a stud. Leaf, I mean, that kid, he's just looking to crush the ball. And, I mean, if he hits the ball, I mean, that thing's gone.
Yeah.
So, I mean, they're a young group. They got a lot to learn still, but I feel like there's a lot of potential in that class.
Now, you've also got just a handful of freshmen on the roster as well. Another group that's going to be going into your program next season is sophomores. They're your first full 4 years class there, of course. So same question, Coach, regarding the few freshmen you did have this season. What's the future like that looking like?
So I think we had 2 freshmen this year, Carson Green and then Jaden Santini. Jaden, I mean, he was kind of out all year with an injury, but he has baseball now, so I'm excited to get him back next year. Carson Green was completely new to baseball this year, but I mean, that kid took strides and how, like, his potential. I mean, from where he started, like, day one to where he finished at the end of the season, I'm really excited to see what he can accomplish in his 4 years in this baseball team.
Coach, obviously you took over the program for the first time this season. What lessons did you learn in your first year, and how did you sort of, grow with the guys throughout your first season?
Oh, I mean, as a coach, I feel like you see the game in a totally different angle, than as a player. I mean, I wish half the stuff I knew now, I knew when I was a player.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I was just learning every game, just like most of them were. Uh, I mean, yeah, just trying to learn from every game, trying to figure out like what I can do to make them better players, make me a better coach, and try to get us more wins.
What about team chemistry, coach? I mean, what do you guys do to sort of build up that team bonding aspect of your program?
I mean, especially this year, what we were doing was a lot of like the older kids were basically coaches this year. So a lot of them were, spending a lot of time with those new kids, trying to work with them. But I mean, next year, we're trying to do a lot more things as a team, like have team dinners before games, stuff like that. Really trying to build that chemistry. Because I mean, this year was more like we're just trying to get the fundamentals down, trying to get this into an actual baseball team. Because most of these kids are basketball kids.
Okay.
So pretty much this year, it felt like we had a basketball team out on the baseball field.
Well, I mean, despite that, coach, I mean, like I said, you guys finished with a 5-14 overall record, 3-7 in the region, despite, of course, like you said, a few players not necessarily being all that familiar with baseball. Of course, NPA, a much smaller school out of the 2A. We've talked to multiple Northland Prep Academy coaches about, having to share players amongst programs. And I want to ask, coach, obviously this is your first opportunity coaching in high school here in Arizona. Obviously you don't have experience at a smaller school as a coach, but I'm curious, how did you navigate, sharing players with the basketball program this season?
Oh, I've always been a big fan of I think the more sports you play, the better you can get at a single sport. Yeah. Just because you work different skills, like different drills, just working different parts of the body. So I think taking the basketball kids who, I mean, once the basketball season got over, they were already in condition. Yeah. So a lot of them were the guys stealing the bases for us. So, I mean, I personally like sharing them because I also coach basketball here. Okay. So that's how I got a lot of them to join. But I think the more sports you play, even different sports, I think the better.
Coach, kind of moving now, talking about the team again, I said that we talk about the pitching rotation, and I wanted to get your thoughts on the pitching rotation. When I took a look at some of the statistics, it seems like a lot of your sophomores have really found their way onto the mound this season. I'm curious, how did you approach the pitching staff this year? Like you had talked about, a couple kids who weren't necessarily as familiar with baseball playing on your team this season. They'll obviously carry that experience into next season, which is great. But how does your pitching staff, how do you approach the pitching staff? And then what do your pitchers offer? I mean, is there a guy that your kind of go-to guy, or are there a couple guys that you're looking to build up? Where are we at with the pitching rotation after this season?
Yeah, so we have our ace and Jordan Donahue. Kid's got great fastball, good curveball. I mean, he basically can do whatever I need him to do. After that, it kind of went to Jerry, Money Penny. Both solid kids. They can throw the ball fast. They got good off speeds. But I mean, after that, that's all that we had at the beginning of the season. So we tried plugging in a lot of kids, like Dylan Mortensen. He stepped up huge on the mound. Henry Troutman even did some good things on the mound. Luke Applin's on our team as well. I mean, he looks like he has a bunch of potential these next few years. So, I mean, we were just kind of plugging people in that wanted the opportunity. And, I mean, most of them, I would say, stepped up to the plate with that.
Well, Coach, you talk about, obviously, I mentioned it a few times, having a couple kids who are newer to the sport. Guys get on the mound, they're pitching for the first time. They run into a lot of trouble early on. How do you approach sort of a bad outing for a newer pitcher? I mean, what kind of words of encouragement are you giving them? What things are you going to work on the next time they get an opportunity to pitch in practice, or if they get a chance to pitch on the mound? But how do you approach a bad outing from one of your pitchers?
I mean, I always like to keep things light, keep it fun. I mean, it's just a game at the end of the day. A lot of them try to take it too serious, and I just try to, just relax them a little bit. But again, most of them, I was like, hey, this is your first time pitching. You're going to get another opportunity. Just keep working on it. Keep your head up. I mean, you got to keep the confidence going.
Yeah. Coach, moving on now, obviously the season's done. Who can we look potentially to bring up next season? I'm not sure if you got any players down at JV that you're looking at, or maybe even some non-baseball players. I know obviously we talked about you sharing players amongst programs, but just curious, is there anyone that you're potentially looking to bring up, or maybe convinced to come play baseball this next season for you?
So we don't have a JV team. That's something we're looking to start up next year. But I know there's a couple basketball kids that have told me they're a little bit interested in maybe playing next year. So, I mean, if they do, that's awesome. But I mean, I'm not going to be too bummed if they don't. I mean, I really like the team we got now.
Yeah, and obviously that group's just going to continue to build together. Like you said, they've got the knowledge they gained this season. They'll go into next season with that and just continue to build on from there. Again, we are speaking with Northland Prep Academy baseball coach Dylan Brown. The season is done for the Spartans. We're just wrapping up here with Coach Brown talking about the year. Coach, the offseason has hit. What's the plans for the offseason? Do you have any guys who happen to participate in club baseball? But regardless, what's the plan for the offseason here, Coach?
Yeah, I think we only have one kid that does club baseball. That'd be Jordan Donahue. But I mean, just continue to build this summer. I mean, pretty much this whole season we worked on the basics, the fundamentals. So this summer I'm hoping to get into like more of the specifics and just really keep building on that.
How do you begin to work in some of those specifics, Coach? When do you get to a point where you feel a guy has enough of a knowledge to sort of get into some more of those minor critique things, hand placement when you're holding a bat, or, trying to work the ball to the opposite side of the field, or even while you're pitching, working on another pitch or working a bit more on location? Like I said, some more of those finite things that once you get the fundamentals set down, you can start to work in. So when do you kind of get that idea of like, okay, this guy's ready for a little bit more of that complicated mechanic and pitcher batter work, whatever?
Yeah. So, I mean, with like individuals, it's a kind of a case by case situation. But pretty much my goal this season was to get the whole team to pretty much be mastered at like the basic fundamentals. And I felt like at the end of the season where we ended, that pretty much everyone on our team had the fundamentals down. So once we got to that point, I was like, all right, this summer, let's build like more on that. Like, let's learn how to do double plays. Let's learn how to like, kind of hit directions, like to left field or right field. So pretty much I feel like we accomplished that. So this summer we're going to work on some harder stuff.
What goals do you have for the program next season, Coach? I mean, what would you like to accomplish? I mean, obviously a playoff appearance would be great, but the program's still building back up. These guys are continuing to gain knowledge. So I'm just curious, what plans do you have right now for next season? I know we're still a little ways out.
Yeah. So, I mean, obviously I would love to make playoffs. I'm sure everyone on the team would, but I just want to make confident baseball players. I really want everyone, when they step on that field, to feel confident in themselves and be able to make that play, get that base hit we need. So, I mean, I really just want to build confident baseball players.
How do you build that confidence, Coach? Is it just repetition?
I think it's repetition. I think it's, just not getting down on the guys. I mean, again, like a lot of them are new. Like, I know they have high expectations for themselves. I mean, I have high expectations for them because I have the confidence in the guys.
Yeah.
I mean, if I didn't have confidence in them, they probably wouldn't be on the field. So I just try to keep it light with them. I try to just keep it fun, keep it a game. I mean, most of these guys, I mean, they're not going to get contracts in the MLB, but
right.
I'm trying to build that confidence. I'm trying to get them to be, just confident athletes.
One last question for you, Coach, before we let you go. Obviously, this was your first opportunity against the region. How was your first time facing the region? How did you feel how you felt your team fared against the region? And were you able to connect with some of your fellow baseball coaches in the area and collaborate a little bit?
Yeah. I really liked the competition we had here. I felt like we had really good competition. Playing Scottsdale Prep, Glendale Prep, like those were really fun games to me. The coach at Glendale Prep, super good guy. Me and him got along really well. I love playing against him. But I mean, those are two really good squads that, I mean, I love going against. It's good competition. I always like to play, the best teams we can play.
Yeah. Well, again, Northland Prep Academy baseball coach Dylan Brown, sir, thank you very much for coming on the show. Congratulations on getting the job at NPA. We look forward to seeing this program grow throughout the offseason, and we'll touch base when we get closer to the start of spring.
All right. Thanks for having me.
Of course, sir. We're going to take a break. When we come back, we'll be joined by Chino Valley track and field coach Marc Metz right here on Off the Bench. Don't go anywhere.
two things we can count on every year:
a new set of tax rules, and great weather here in northern Arizona.
Jackson Hewitt Tax Service, locally owned and operated by Lewis Rice since 1997, is here for you all year long.
Your neighborhood Jackson Hewitt Tax Office will help you in all of your taxing situations.
Electronic filing is always free with your tax preparation at Jackson Hewitt Tax Service.
Get more in return. Call 1-800-234-1040 for an office near you.
Welcome back to Off the Bench, Northern Arizona Prep Sports, presented by Rice Accounting and Jackson Hewitt Tax Services and Cottonwood Parks and Recreation. I'm joined now by Chino Valley High School track and field coach Marc Metz. Coach Metz, welcome back onto the program.
Thanks again for having me. I appreciate it.
Well, we are very, very happy to have you. The Cougars just got done competing in states. They had a bunch of kids go, a lot from the girls' side of the program, a bunch from the boys' side of the program. So we thought it'd be a great time to bring Coach Metz on and wrap up the season. So, Coach, how did state competition go? How did the season go? How did just everything go for you this year?
We had a pretty good season. Got off to a little bit of a rough start. We had our spring coach leave us and then trying to scramble and get coaches. But we still have a great group of seniors. That have been around the program for the last few years that did really well. I think all but two meets, without looking, that we actually got a school record, and we got multiple school records at these meets. We just had two last night at the state meet, and but just for this season to go as it did, I was really happy about how we did. How not just school records, but personal records, PRs. And us to get, 11 people into state, I was really happy with this season.
Yeah, just to name some of the players, Natalie Bannister made it in for the 100-meter hurdles. Olivia Calusano, I apologize for Calusano, thank you very much. She made it for triple jump and the pole vault. On the boys' side, Andre Comer made it for the 800-meter and the 200-meter. Brody Ryan made it for the 300-meter hurdles. And again, that doesn't just list everyone who's made it for state. I mean, there are more names there of kids who were able to compete at state. So, Coach, I mean, starting with the girls' side, I mean, how did you like the effort from that side of the program? Like I mentioned, you had a bunch of names make it into state this year.
Yeah, we have usually what happens is we have a good core group of athletic girls, and they kind of do many different things. You mentioned Natalie, she does the hurdles and both relays, the 4x100, 4x4. Emily Rednick in the sprints and both relays. Olivia just transferred in this year, and she is an athlete. And I don't know if I mentioned before, she was on the show American Ninja Warrior.
Oh, you did,
so
yeah. I remember.
Yes, for her to come in and just a good athlete. Pole vault, it was a natural fit for her, and triple jump. Jackie Ocampo, Danielle Graham. And so for us to take that, I mean, we had 5-6 girls make it, but they do a lot of different events. And then, so for us, to shoot and try to get in the top at state for a smallish program, because some of the bigger schools in Division III are 1,300 students. So we're at 750. And with our condition of our track is in poor shape as it is, I was really proud of how the girls did this season.
Yeah, a solid performance. Coach, you talk a little bit about some of the events. Obviously, you guys had the 4x400 meter race, the relay race. On the girls' side, you had Emily, Natalie, Olivia, and Danielle. I'll ask you a similar question regarding the boys, but how did that group grow as your relay team throughout the season?
The girls, we had everybody back, but one of the members decided not to come out this year, and then Olivia stepped in, and she just fit right in. So I think, yes, they were athletic, and yes, they were good, but they really liked each other, and having that continuity was really good for Olivia to step right in. And then for the 4x4, Danielle was on the team last year, so we had everybody but one back. So with Olivia fitting right into that team, I mean, it was just really good. She fit right in, was a natural. And I think, yes, talent helps, but for a relay team, having that cohesion really benefited us. And they really wanted to do it. It wasn't just getting 4 fast legs. It was like, how can we get better? How can we compete? And there is a natural rivalry. Prescott is right there, and they don't want to lose to Chino, and we want to beat Prescott. So that's always good.
Yeah, there's what's great about track and field and a few other sports that don't necessarily follow the 6A through 1A format of their region breakdowns like you see in like basketball and football is you guys get an opportunity to compete against a lot of schools that other programs within Chino Valley don't get a chance to compete against. Prescott being one. It's you do okay. I take that back. Maybe sometimes you get a 3A and a 4A matchup, but for the most part, you guys are seeing a lot of teams that other programs don't get the chance to. Correct?
Yes, and I think even more so than that, like, Prescott and Bradshaw are 4A, and very few times, because they're that much bigger and better, in football and stuff.
Yeah.
But like we're going against some 6A schools in
Yeah.
track. I mean, we're not competing head to head, but as we are competing against them, and that's what I tell them when we get to the state meet, you've run faster meets. You've run against better competition. I don't mean anything bad against that, but we've gone against the best in the state of Arizona. Now we're just limited in Division III. So I think that does help.
Again, continuing our conversation here, Coach, on the boys' side, Andre Comer able to make it in. Your son, Quentin Metz, able to make it in as well. Brody Ryan. We'll talk about the relay team in a second. Caden Wagner making it in for the javelin. What about the efforts on the boys' side, Coach? How did you like how your guys handled themselves at state?
Well, I thought we did really good. I knew Andre coming back as a senior would be really good. Hard part with him is he qualified in 5 events. So what events do I put him in at state? And he chose the 800 over the 400. He loves the 400. Caden Wagner kind of came out his freshman year, and with the COVID, the season was shut down. Last year he didn't come out. He decides to come out this year. Don't know what event. All of a sudden, as next quarterback and being a strong guy, does javelin is natural and got the school record in his second meet doing it. And Quentin coming up, and he really wants it and able to talk at home with both, me and then his mom, who was a good runner in high school and college. So just getting that experience. And then Brody, having him come up, and he really wants it. And he decided, I really want to do hurdles. He's been practicing it and qualified for state and ultimately set the school record in it.
Wow. So incredible performances on both sides, the girls and the boys. Coach, like I mentioned, your son Quentin getting an opportunity to compete at the state level. Quentin's your only son, and my dad coached me in baseball. I know how much fun it was to have my dad on the sidelines or in the dugout or whatever. But I want to ask you, what does it mean to you to get an opportunity now to see Quentin not only compete at state, but coach him at state?
It is interesting coaching your own child, because some of the things that, and all my kids have been pretty good coaching, so I can't complain about that. But, some when I get mad, it's like, okay, I can't show favoritism. I mean, he is my kid and everybody knows that. We look alike. But, how does he want it? And especially different dynamic. I've coached my daughters, totally different than coaching my son. And especially because he really wants it and has that drive. Yeah. I've enjoyed it. And it's cool being able to talk at home. Like, hey, how about this? We do this. And hey, you want to go for a run? That's, or like, your dad might say, let's go play catch or let's go hit. So, I mean, whereas I can't necessarily call up one of my runners, hey, let's go for a run. I mean, I could post it and see if people want to do, but it's real easy and keeps me in shape also.
Coach, just kind of moving along here. Obviously the offseason is now upon us here as the season is wrapped up. So regarding track and field, what is your plan for the offseason this year? I mean, I know you're probably told your runners, hey, keep running, keep trying to stay in shape, keep those cardio numbers up. But for you, what does the track and field offseason mean? And what is your plan for the offseason now that the season is officially done?
Well, one is kind of wrapping up into school year, all that stuff, and missing my seniors. That's always a tough thing as we talk about this. But, the returners is, thinking about getting the gear now for cross country. And then we've had some, running over the summer and getting into shape. But the other thing, too, is that we are getting a new track at Chino Valley High School. And they expect it done. Right now is August 1st. We'll see what the weather is and everything. But once it's done, I would like to, start utilizing it and being able to work on hurdles, being able to work on the jumps, plyometrics, and some of these ones that are going into soccer, football. It's like, hey, we can work on speed. We can work on some of the other things, not hardcore like we would during the season, but just so they don't get rusty. So when track starts or the off season starts, like in December or January, they're kind of ready to go. And hopefully, next year we'll be mentioning more names as we get to the state meet.
Again, we were speaking with Chino Valley High School track and field coach Marc Metz. The Cougars sent a bunch of players to state this year on the girls' side and on the boys' side. Broke a lot of personal records this season. Coach, what goals do you have for the program going into next year?
That's a tough thing. Like I just mentioned, trying to get some kids, more kids going to state. I knew we had a good group coming, but some of them I knew about and some kind of surprised me. So I think the goal would be to get just some of these younger kids developed, getting them going, getting, some of the ones that made state this year, like Quentin, like Brody, and some of them to work on trying to replace some of the ones that just graduated. Maybe not replace, but try to help out and try to fill in their shoes.
Yeah. Coach, I want to backtrack real quick. We talked a little bit about the chemistry amongst the girls relay team. And I don't want to pose a similar question regarding the boys, but I am curious, how do both of these groups sort of bond together? Obviously they're, two relay teams on the opposite sides of the genders. But how do they differently grow together, with that contrast between, the girls and boys?
Yeah, that is a different dynamic. So we have the girls and they came back and again, they liked each other this year. But, Emily's a volleyball player. Danielle's a soccer player. Natalie just does track. Olivia just coming in. She played a lot of sports, basketball and soccer. So kind of bringing them in a different dynamic and working on this. For the guys, what's really nice is that last year we lost, we had 3 seniors and then Andre. So I'm like, what are we going to do? And I thought, we have some people that might replace them. But we have 3 sophomores, Quentin being one of them, Brody being the other, Javier Johns being another. There are 3 sophomores. And for us to get the school record, I was like, wow. And, yes, we have Andre. But I think what's really helped them is that they all have grown up kind of together, running cross country at Heritage, running cross country at Chino Valley High School. So they've known each other. They hang out during the summer. They hang out during the off season. So for them, it was just really natural. And for them to do it, and then, we just talked about for next year is like finding somebody to kind of, get that one spot. Last year we had 3, now we have 1, but this one might be hard because Andre it has played a very big role.
Right. Again, we're speaking with Chino Valley High School track and field coach Marc Metz. Coach, just real quick, I got 2 more questions for you before we wrap it up. First and foremost, how did you feel about the section this year? You briefly mentioned it. We kind of talked more generally about it, but in terms of the competition, how did you feel that the section that you guys compete in did this season?
With track, it's all based on times. And so it's hard because in the past we'd have like our section champ or we'd have whatever divisionals, regionals. And now we don't really do that. They've kind of taken the team aspect out of it. But if we're talking about Division 3, Division 3 is really strong. You have teams like Snowflake and Sal Point and Shadow Mountain. To name a few. But there's some really good competition within this division. And for us to make it and stay in some of these events and then, have our girls and guys do that well, I'm very impressed. And so, yeah, we're in a strong section, but we're kind of holding our own in some of the events.
Coach, last question for you. I know that you're now kind of preparing somewhat for the cross country season. So just real quick, we'll touch base a little bit more towards like the summer or we get closer to the cross country season, but how's the cross country team looking to start the year and how are you preparing for that season?
I think right now it's kind of, end of school and getting through that and getting through Memorial Day and then everybody recharge and kind of just take a rest and get rid of those little nagging injuries. But, starting over the summer, starting summer running, but our boys team, we got 6th at state last year and best we've ever done in Chino Valley history. But we lose 4 out of the top 7. So we're going to struggle, to get back up there. But we have a good group coming in. And when you have, coming back with your number 1 runner, that does help. With the girls, we're losing our number 1 girl, but we have everybody coming back. So I think we'll be able to fill in, especially for the girls. Guys, we're going to have a kind of a strong commitment and have a good summer and try to get back. We probably won't be able to get 6th at state, but if we can make state and maybe top 10 would be the goal.
Well, Coach, I know that the cross-country team, much like your track and field program, are technically the Cougars, but maybe the cross-country team can be more so like a phoenix and rise from the ashes and continue to grow under the leadership of this man right here. Chino Valley High School track and field coach Marc Metz. Coach Metz, it's always great to speak with you. Like I said, We'll touch base during the summer and get ready for the cross country season. Have a great summer. And again, I appreciate your time as usual.
Thanks. I enjoy being here. Thanks for having me.
We're going to take a break. When we come back, we'll be joined by Prescott High School softball coach Randall Bryan right here on Off the Bench. Don't go anywhere.
Two things we can count on every year:
a new set of tax rules and great weather here in northern Arizona.
Jackson Hewitt Tax Service, locally owned and operated by Lewis Rice since 1997, is here for you all year long.
Your neighborhood Jackson Hewitt Tax Office will help you in all of your taxing situations.
Electronic filing is always free with your tax preparation at Jackson Hewitt Tax Service.
Get more in return. Call 1-800-234-1040 for an office near you.
Welcome back to Off the Bench, Northern Arizona Prep Sports, presented by Rice Accounting and Jackson Hewitt Tax Services and Cottonwood Parks and Recreation. I'm joined now by Prescott High School softball coach Randall Bryan. Coach Bryan, welcome back onto the show.
Thanks for having me.
Well, we're very happy to have you. First and foremost, congratulations on accomplishing the 2022 season. The Badgers finished with a 10-8 overall record, 5-7 in the region. Very, very tough region this year. We'll talk to Coach Bryan about his thoughts about that. Earning the Badgers the number 17th rank in the state, which gave them a play-in round game against Vista Grand. We'll talk about that here in a little bit. But, Coach, just more so about the season. How'd you feel this year went, and what did you like?
Well, there was a lot to like. I'm not sure, as a coach and as players, you come in with expectations at the beginning of the year. I'm not sure we actually met all of those, but we did get ourselves, again, as you said, we play in the toughest region in the state. There's 46 teams in 4A, and we had 5 teams in the top 16. And, every game in that situation is difficult. And, we had some really close games that, unfortunately didn't go our way. We lost to Mingus by a run. We lost to them the first time by 2. We went 14 innings with Coconino and lost that game by a run. I think that, like I said, and we were young. I think we learned a lot. Mm-hmm. I think our expectations were maybe that we would get a little more out of the season. But again, I think we did get a lot out, and we had a lot of moments that showed a lot of promise. And I think, we can just hopefully build from there.
Like I said, the Badgers get an opportunity to take on Vista Grand to start off the postseason. Coach, 4-1 victory to advance after the play-in round. What did you like in that win against Vista Grand?
Well, I think we came out with a lot of energy. It was at their home, which is always difficult with anytime you play any of the playoff games or even the play-in games. When you're playing on the road, it makes it extremely difficult. But we jumped out early on them, got a couple runs, and our pitching, Eliza Legg, did a fantastic job through the whole game. And she had 12 strikeouts, got us out of a couple jams when we really needed it. We played some pretty solid defense. I thought all around was a pretty darn good game against a pretty well-coached team. They were young, maybe a little bit, but they had a couple players that, is probably as good as anyone.
Yeah, you talk about Eliza Legg, and along with Riley Parra, your 2 sophomore pitchers who were great in the circle. You talk about Eliza being very, very key in that win against Vista Grand, keeping obviously, I believe they're the Spartans off the base paths and of course off the scoreboard. A 4-1 victory in that play-in round. But Coach, I don't want to jump too ahead here, but obviously you'll get both of those pitchers back next season. just more so that conversation about your two sophomore pitchers. I mean, what do Eliza and Riley separately bring to the table in terms of pitches they offer and how they approach the position?
Well, I think they've grown a lot over the last year. They're, somewhat different pitchers. One obviously is a righty and the other is a lefty. Eliza being the left-hander. Eliza probably brings one thing she really brings is that, if you look at her statistics over the last couple of years, she doesn't hardly walk anyone. So she's always around the zone. She puts pressure on the hitter to put the ball in play. And she ends up eventually with a lot of strikeouts too. RJ Parra is probably doesn't have quite that command, but she's got a huge heart. She will pitch anytime I want her to. She gets out there and she gives me everything she's got. And she's got a great changeup. And they both throw, reasonably have enough velocity to keep hitters in check a little bit. And then, like I said, with RJ's changeup, she can make it extremely difficult. Both of them fought injuries a little bit this year,
right?
Which hurt them. RJ had a foot injury that kept her out for a while in the pitching, and she tried to gut it out, and she's one of those kind of kids that she'll never want to come out. But sometimes you have to, for their own good, you got to, make a decision. Right. And of course, Eliza had a couple illnesses, and then she got hit in the elbow in the Coconino game, in our second Coconino game, and that put her out a couple of weeks too. Right. So I'm looking for them just to grow. They're going to be juniors. They grew significantly from freshman to sophomore, and I'm sort of hoping that that's continuing.
Moving on now, again, you guys were able to knock out Vista Grand, that 4-1 win in the play-in round, setting up your first round matchup against the Canyon del Oro Dorados. Coach, Canyon del Oro, the number 3 team in the state, always very tough to play against. What did you like in that one from your team?
Well, not much. We did jump out early. I thought we had good energy to start with. We scored a run in the first inning, probably had an opportunity to maybe score another run or two. But it's like I told the players, Canyon del Oro obviously is a very good team. Their history, they have a lot of really good players. Mm-hmm. They have a ton of depth. They had like 20 players. Yeah. And I think all 20 of them were club players. So they got a lot of depth. We made some mistakes in that game early that we couldn't close out innings with. And I think that was one of the big factors in it, is you can't give a team like that more opportunities. Right. And we did. Not that it would, I don't know what difference it would have made. I think it would have been a much closer game. But again, you're talking about a team that, could eventually be in the finals, if not win it all.
Yeah, we are recording this interview. Obviously, the state playoffs are still going on. They'll be wrapping up this weekend, but they are still currently going on. And you're right, Canyon del Oro is a very, very good program. And you look up and down their lineup, not to get too much about the Dorados here, but I mean, just to emphasize more of how good they are. They got a chance to play against Mingus Union. I do the broadcast for Mingus Union High School, for those who don't know. So obviously, I got a chance to see the Dorados in person. And Coach Bryan is right. I mean, they are a very deep team. They're a very well-coached team. They're all club players, and they all hit very, very well. A 10-0 loss was what the Marauders took to Canyon del Oro in, I think it was like round 2 or 3 after beating Greenway the first time. But you're right, Canyon del Oro is a very, very good team. And like I said, you look up and down that lineup, and there are girls who have only played like 3 games or 3 or 4 games, and they're batting like 500, or they're batting almost 450 or something like that. They're a very, very good school. But Coach, obviously making the playoffs is huge. You've got a couple young players. We talked about Eliza and Riley being your 2 sophomore pitchers. Playoff experience is great for them, especially getting an opportunity to pitch against a team like Canyon del Oro, a team that they won't see the kind of caliber in the 4A Grand Canyon region, just because there are no private schools within the 4A Grand Canyon region. So we don't get to do the special recruiting or whatever you want to call it, the scholarships. But we love our private schools here. But Obviously getting a chance to see a team like that does help with the development of Eliza and Riley. But I want to ask just more so generally, Coach, how does just making the playoffs help the program going forward in generating excitement, generating talent to come and play for you? I mean, what does it mean to just make the playoffs and get a chance to see some teams like Vista Grand or a Canyon Del Oro?
Well, I think, one of the key things is it's hard to duplicate experience. Mm-hmm. And experience is something that, we're still a relatively young team. I think we have talent. I know we have a lot of heart. We play hard. Those players practice a lot. They're very dedicated. But again, experience, and I think you see that. I think you see that with, you see the Mingus team a lot. I think you see that with the Mingus team. They've got a lot of seniors. Yep. They've played a lot of games, and they played a lot of games together. Yeah. And I think that we still are trying to put that all together. And this year again we started 3 sophomores, a freshman, 2 juniors. Yeah. So we're still, I think we're still trying to come around. But I think experience. Anytime you can play teams at a high level, you learn a lot about yourself. You learn a lot about, what you need to do to go to the next level. And you also learn too, that you can play with those teams. Yeah. Sometimes young players come in, not, it's like I've said, they have a little deer in the headlights look. They're not sure of what to expect of themselves or the other team. And then when you get into a situation like that, where you play those better teams, now you start to realize, okay, this is what I'm looking at, and I can compete with that. Yeah. So I think that really gives you, as time goes on with the experience, I think that it gives a huge boost.
Well, even more so to your point, Coach, you can't purchase experience. You can't learn experience. You have to experience things. So even like you had said during the Canyon Del Oro game, I mean, you guys jump ahead of the number 3 team in the state, and you're like, oh man, we can kind of beat anybody. And I know the game didn't end up going the way that you wanted it to go, but just the fact that you were able to jump ahead of a team like Canyon Del Oro and make them sweat a little bit, taking on, at the time, a number 17 team in a first round game that, their mind's probably already on round 2, and you guys come out swinging early on, and they're like, whoa, hang on. Okay, wait a second. Like you said, that experience alone, the idea of Eliza can pitch against great talent. Riley can throw a shutout against a top school. You have players who can get on base against a top pitcher. We all know about Caitlin Terry out of Greenway. She's very, very hard to hit. And it just gets harder from there. Even in the region, you've got Caitlin So out of Coconino High School. You do lose Alexis Ayersman this year. She's graduating, but every single year you just get better and better talent. And like you said, Coach, that experience really, really helps your young players just kind of get that confidence to know, hey, we've been to the playoffs. We know what the feeling is like. We know what Coach Bryan asks of us. And it just puts together a more complete program. And you get your teams like Mingus Union, Coach. You talk about the Marauders having a lot of seniors playing a lot of games together. Similar thing with Prescott. You guys make the playoffs this year. You've got 2 sophomores who are going to be juniors. You talk about a couple freshmen already making the varsity team. I mean, that's just going to set you guys up for success down the line.
I believe that. I think that's a great assessment of where we are and where we want to get to. And I think, even like I said, you look at the Canyon Del Oro game, we made some uncharacteristic mistakes. Our defense had been playing extremely well going into that game, and we did not play well in that game, and we gave them some extra outs. Mm-hmm. And I think, when our team realized at the end, and, we had discussed it with them, that, we don't make those mistakes that normally we don't make. Right. We're right in the hunt in that game. And I think that should give them confidence going on. I think it will. I think they have a good understanding of that now, and a good understanding of where we need to go from here.
Again, we were speaking with Prescott High School softball coach Randall Bryan. The Badgers finished the season with a 10-8 overall record, 5-7 in the region. They were able to get into the play-in round, beat Vista Grand, and unfortunately, they did take a loss to Canyon Del Oro in round 1. Coach, just kind of looking more forward, like I mentioned, you'll get Eliza Lake back. You'll get Riley Parra back next season. You talked about your juniors turning into seniors, freshmen turning into sophomores. I want to ask, though, about the JV team. How'd the JV season go? Who are you looking forward to potentially bringing up from down there?
Well, there's 2 or 3 girls that actually we brought up towards the end of the season just to give them a little bit of, I love to give those, I have a philosophy about a lot of that. There's players, when we start the season, there's always 2 or 3 players on that junior varsity team that really ability-wise are very close to being able to be on the varsity. However, if they're sitting on the bench all the time, they're not really progressing.
Right.
So I prefer to keep them on the junior varsity team to give them an opportunity to play. Right. And usually at the end of the season, then we'll start to bring them up and try to get them a little bit of exposure. We were lucky enough a couple games at the end of the season that we played we had big leads in. We were able to get a couple of those girls in a little bit, and really looking. There's to name them, Riley Crockett, who was one of the JVs, Emma Sims and Cameron Scribner. Those 3 for sure. One's a freshman, 2 are sophomores. I think they've got a lot of potential. We're starting a program this year that we have done a little bit of in the past, but this year we're really going to focus on those younger players fundamentally during the summer.
Right.
So we will be doing we will have a couple sessions a week with some of those players so they can get more comfortable. It's like I always say, and this, it's a huge jump from the junior varsity to the varsity.
Yes, it is.
In every facet, things as simple as base running. Yep. You get away with a lot of stuff on the JV team that you will not get away with on the varsity.
Right.
There's the focus of the game is, it's much more intense at that varsity level.
Right.
And, so what we want to do is try to get some of those JV players up to speed with that, so they understand that, when you're on second base, if you're going to wander off second base on the varsity, you're probably going to get thrown out.
Yeah. On
the JVs, you're probably going to get back, and it's probably not going to be an issue. So, there is some talent there. There's some great kids at that on our JV team, and I'm looking forward to them just getting more exposure to that higher level.
Well, more so in the conversation about the summer, Coach, club ball is obviously something that a lot of players participate in. I'm sure you have a bunch of players who are going to be playing club this year. I want to ask, I'm not sure if I've asked you this question, but as a high school coach, how does club ball kind of help you during the summer? You obviously only get to see these girls, when you've established your summer workouts, or you've got a couple things planned. I know maybe a tournament or 2, or maybe just a couple games here and there, or maybe just practices or tryouts, because obviously we got the fall ball, then we got winter, and then we go into the actual season of spring. But I want to ask, as a high school coach, have you been able to kind of benefit from club, of these girls gaining that experience like we've talked about, of just playing softball year round? Has that helped you during the off season, or does it kind of create a problem where, maybe you've adjusted a swing, they go to a club coach, swing's different now, and you're kind of going, okay, well, what all the stuff we worked on this off season and in the summer? So I just want to ask, have you seen any benefit to having your girls participate in club, whether it be with you or not?
Well, I think that the club deal is sort of a double-edged sword, as you are saying, that there's a lot of really good things that come from it.
Yeah.
We have a few players that are, they're number one, they're great kids, and they work really hard. So they try hard, and they try hard to be coached well too. But there are sometimes mixed messages between the club and the high school, and it's like I always tell them, when you come to the high school, it's a team thing. It's a team game. It's how we do as a team. Some of the club, the atmosphere is that, how do I do personally, because I'm wanting to be seen, or, we're wanting to have opportunities to move on. So there's a little bit of a mindset that's different, I think, with that, which is, like I said, we're fortunate. Our kids are great kids. So they really try hard to make that transition from the club.
Right.
And, obviously the clubs, they play a lot of good competition. They are playing again, even on their own team. When they're practicing with more elite players, and on the when you get into the high school, you get what you get.
Right.
It's like where they may play on a club team that's 15 deep, where we on the high school we're thrilled if we're 9 or 10 deep. Yeah. With it. So there's an adjustment they have to make too, with the understanding that my teammates may not always do everything at a high level.
Right.
And so I have to make adjustments for that, and learn to embrace my teammates. And our club does a pretty good job with that, but it's a challenge.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. And in a lot of ways, if, like you say, you talk about that double-edged sword, another positive to playing club, you talked about that transition from JV to varsity. You get a chance as a sophomore in high school to jump onto a club team. You make some strides your junior year, or even sooner if maybe you play on a freshman team. You really can make some big jumps. I mean, seriously, from where you start to where you get. I mean, club ball has a lot of positives. But Coach Bryan, I want to thank you very much for coming on the show to talk a little softball with us. We will touch base again when we get closer to the start of the season. So I wish you a very fun and safe off season. I'm happy that you're back with Prescott. I'm looking forward to talking with you again next season. And with that, Coach, thank you once again for coming on.
Thank you for having me. We always enjoy the opportunity, and we'll see you again soon.
That's going to do it for this episode of Off the Bench. I'm your host, Philip Catalfamo, wishing you a great rest of your week. We'll talk to you again next time.